Welcome to the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, joined by Kevin Reichard and Mick Gillispie. Mick, first, how are you?
Doing great, guys. Doing great. Baseball, got 4 Cubs games in since I talked to you last. So even though I'm not there in person, I'm there in spirit, and it's been so enjoyable to be able to watch baseball again, I got to tell you.
Kevin, how's by you?
Same thing. I've been binging baseball, binging sports. Interesting to see how different sports are handling things. But all in all, it was really nice to see baseball on Thursday night, even though it was interrupted by a thunderstorm.
Lemonade League, we had 7 innings scheduled. We played 7. Yankees and Nationals only got 6 in. Welcome back, baseball. You have to deal with the weather. What do you think of the cutouts of the cardboard fans?
You want me to start?
Sure.
I hate them. I mean, I'm watching the Dodgers game opening night, and I guess someone told me they were twins. There were 2 girls that were behind home plate that looked exactly the same. I don't. If you're a twin, you get one for both of you. You know, like having like double cutouts, and then someone had posted, and I don't even know if it's true or not, but that the Marlins man, that goofball that travels around and sits behind home plate at games that the Marlins aren't playing with, bright orange so that everybody can see him, look at me over here, that he had bought like hundreds of these cutouts. I saw the picture. Can't stand that. Like, it's a distraction. I'm more for the Fox digital like fans that I saw when the Cubs and the Brewers played on Saturday. Like they look terrible. Like they're all wearing the same like t-shirt and stuff. But you know what? They're for some crazy reason, they're all like, they start like 5 rows back. So you only see them when like it's like a wide shot, you're not really focused in. I like that a lot better than the cardboard cutout. Sorry. I guess Marlon, man, he ruined it for me. Because I just can't, like, I'm sure he's a nice guy and everything, and people are like, oh, Mickey's such a nice guy. He's annoying, okay? I'm just going to put that out there for our Ballpark Digest, like, that's not the right way to get attention, Sorry.
Kevin, your thoughts on the cardboard cutouts?
I hate Marlins, man, and the cutouts as well. I'm totally with Mick on this. It's a distraction that's unnecessary. I'm not a fan of the cutouts either, although seeing Elmo in one was kind of fun. But, and not all teams have done it. For instance, the Astros didn't do it. And it just felt like a better game experience with the Astros, oddly enough. And I hate the augmented reality. It was just I hate fake things, and we all know that there's no fans in the stands, so embrace the game. The worst moment came in the ESPN Brewers-Cubs broadcast when they went to the 7th inning, and Fox had the virtual fans in the bleachers with a black and white digitized Harry Caray singing, kicking out to the ball game above them, like singing from heaven. And it was the worst moment I've seen in a game broadcast in years for any sport. A dead man singing to unreal people. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
Well said.
I wonder, with networks experimenting with CGI, if we're going to see, let's say we're at a game 2-3 years from now, and someone contacts us after the fact and goes, boy, that game you were at looked packed. And we're going, no. It was maybe half full, but on TV it looked packed.
I think that's a concern. The crowd noise didn't bother me. The background noise didn't bother me because you quit listening to it after about 5 minutes at the most. So that's an ambiance thing. But you're right. I mean, I called it a deepfake in my Ballpark Digest story. It's not reality.
Let me give you guys some perspective here. And Jesse, you know what I'm talking about. There's a team in the Southern League called the Jackson Generals, and you would go to their games, and I think that, just from what I understand, they're going to be no more. Like, they're one of the teams that minor league baseball is going to not have back next year, which is a shame because I do like Jackson. and I enjoy going to that little town in between Nashville and Memphis. But no one shows up to the games on weekdays, and I don't even, from what I understand, they don't even market those games. But I mean, I'm talking about nobody. Like crowds like what you're seeing at the ballparks now. That's a reality, right? If you play a day game, like you're literally gonna have 10 people there, and they're scouts. Like not like there's no fans. They might sell like one ticket, maybe two, like, which is crazy. And we broadcast these games, and people in Knoxville and Tennessee, like they're used to, they go to a Smokies game and there's people there, and they expect that when the team's on the road, that the other markets are going to embrace their team like the people at Smoky Stadium, and that's the expectation that I want to set as the broadcaster on the radio. I don't want to be like, hey, look, we're people care so little about our league that there's literally 10 people here. Right. So my whole point on this is that's what the situation is now. They pipe in the crowd noise, and I like it. Like it sounds right. Like I was listening to Ron and Pat on the Cubs game. I had to ride out to the store, so I had to turn off the TV and listen on the radio. It sounded fine. Like I would struggle so hard in these broadcasts to talk and fill the dead air because there's just nothing there, right? And at least by having that piped in crowd noise, it sounds close. It's not perfect, but it sounds like when you're just listening, it sounds right. In Jackson, first off, I got a wireless mic that I would hang behind home plate just to try to get as many of the ballpark sounds as I could. But then they would play just an overabundance of ballpark noises. Okay. You know what I'm talking about, guys? Not piped in crowd, but like instead of having the clapping hands once in a while, it's like every batter, every pitch, there was like something else like that. It just gets to the point in there where you're so fatigued mentally when you walk out of those games because the person that's running the music is just killing you with all these different noises. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like it'd be like playing Charge, but playing it like the entire day. Like instead of just when you have a couple runners on base and you're looking for a rally, And as I say this, I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of describing it, but in my head, I'm picturing like being on the air with the headphones on and just listening to all of these different sounds that they just keep throwing out. Like, every single pitch is a broken glass here and, that bomb noise, woo, and there's no other noise in there. So anyway, my point is like, I would have preferred that they took that piped in crowd noise, just pipe in the crowd noise. It actually, to me, it makes it sound a lot more natural, I guess the best way. So I was enjoying that last night. I thought the Reds did a good job of kind of playing those noises, and I'm watching the game, and although I don't see anyone, it still felt right to me. And Marquis doing a really good job with the broadcast for the Cubs.
I think everyone's doing a good broadcast. One of the things I have noticed is that the video quality is appreciably improved this year on MLB.com, MLB.TV broadcasts. And I don't know whether it's what it's a function of, whether Sinclair put some money into real high def as opposed to the quasi high def BAM had been pushing for years. But the games just seem to look a whole lot sharper. The sound seems better. All in all, the production values are much better this year. And Marquis is part of that too. It's a pretty good debut for the network.
Mick, what you're talking about, the words that come to mind for me are sensory assault. And I remember whatever age I was, deciding that every sport was a genre of music, and baseball was jazz or blues or something that you could have in the background, and you could choose to listen to it and love it, or you could choose to not listen to it and it would be there and you just really dig it nonetheless, as it set the background for whatever else you were doing, however you were preoccupying yourself. And another other sports, like football, is the hard rock or the heavy metal, whatever it is that captures your attention constantly, and you have to be on the edge of your seat. But you just can't do that with baseball over 9 innings.
Well, if they would have taken, like, you go to an NBA game and they'll just have like music blaring during the game, and it's like, if they would have done that, and I know in baseball, like, you want quiet, right before the pitch from whatever, right? So it would be like after the pitch, what, like that time that it takes to get another pitch out there where all these sounds would come. I'd prefer that they just, in those games in Jackson, they just would have played music like they did in the NBA, where, okay, well, we don't have any crowds, so we're just going to, jam out like AC/DC and stuff, or whatever the mix is, the ESPN mix. But I mean, Jesse, most people don't know what that is like, the sensory overload that you're talking about. But you and I both, I'm sure you've been to that place where you're like, I can't get out of here fast enough. It's bad to do a game where there's no one in the stands, but then the person that's playing the sound effects makes it so miserable to sit there through it.
In the NBA, it's so strictly regulated too. And I don't know if it's specifically called this or not, but it's the music as a team brings the ball out of the backcourt and goes into its offense. And then the music shifts off. But each team has a specific list of choices that they can use for their point guard to bring the ball up the court, and then it's got to go. It's a fascinating little thing within the game.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
Timed to within an inch of their lives. It's amazing how tight those productions have to be.
About the fake noise, I was listening to a podcast with Toronto media people, and they were listing and ranking the amount of fake crowd noise given to specific players, because not every player was given the same kind of applause or ovation when his name was announced and he came up to home plate. And they're going, well, I wonder if the agents are going to get involved and say, next contract, I need a fake crowd noise clause that makes sure that my guy is in the top 3 of crowd noise for this team.
Nothing about agents would surprise me about that. They'll slip clauses in about the most silly things, and this is definitely one. I didn't really notice any difference between players, but I wasn't listening that closely either. But you could tell the announcers were listening pretty closely. There were more than one instance where there was a crack of the bat, a good hit, the crowd noise came up, and then the broadcasters reacted to that. Although I suspect it was announcers who were not working at the game. They were working at home or in a studio.
Maybe so, but if you're a good announcer, I would argue, you always are cognizant of the fact that, let's say Mick and I are broadcasting. Well, it's not actually a 2-person broadcast. The crowd sound, the sound of the game, is part of that. So you have to give it its own space, and you never actually fight it for that space.
Yeah, and it's got to be tough too, because I watched the Cubs Brewers. Adam Amin, who's one of my favorite broadcasters. I think he's fantastic. He's on there. Eric Karros is there. I don't even think they were in the same spot, and you could tell that it was really difficult for them to not step on each other. Like there was a lot of, and I thought, God, that is a really, really difficult position to be in. And I'm guessing for Adam, just moving over from ESPN to Fox, this might be his first game. I don't know, but I mean, and so you're at a studio somewhere. You're not at the park, whatever. So the entire situation is so unique. I saw Wayne Randazzo and the Mets broadcast. They were playing the Red Sox at Fenway, but him and Howie, his broadcast partner, are in the booth in New York calling the game, off of a monitor. What happens if the monitor goes dead? Like, what happens if there's a pause? Like it'd be like, I mean, the only person I know that would have any experience on that is you, Jesse. You sit from your vintage broadcast. You just sit there and make stuff up while you're trying to get the feedback.
Well, from the 1989 Orioles Why Not documentary, I still remember John Miller in the fog and going, where is it, with the baseball? Because nobody had any clue where the ball had gone. There was a TV highlight that I saw where the guys were clearly calling it from wherever they were, but not at the stadium.
Yeah.
And the play-by-play guy said, in the air center field. And then the camera switched. A guy goes, make that left field. And it's the things that it's difficult to judge, distance, arc, which fielder is going to get it, right? I'm trying to call games off a monitor for the first time in my life, really, this year. And there's some things that you can call great off a monitor, like pitches, and other things that are so difficult just to have that judgment on where that ball is hit. If a guy crushes one down the line, you know when you're there at the stadium whether it's got a chance to be a fair or foul ball. But if you're not there, you really need to take that Mississippi or longer to understand, does it have a chance to be a home run? Was it hooked well foul? Is it going to get caught before it even gets to the wall?
So, Mick, when you're calling a spring game, are you working mostly off a monitor anyway in the press booth, or are you trying to use it as little as possible?
Yeah, I've tried to learn how to use the monitors more because I trust my sight for the most part. I've been, very good distance sight. Reading the up close stuff is difficult sometimes, but I guess where I'm short on that, I'm definitely long on being able to see the field and tell what's going on. And so I like to just kind of watch the game and interpret what I see with my eyes. But then the more TV you do, I like using the monitors because I feel like if I'm on TV, like so much of what people are watching at home is what the picture is, So you almost like Harry Caray was so good at this, like just talking about what he sees, making something funny based off the monitor, So I try to do a little bit of both, but for the most part, me personally, like my comfort level is just seeing with my eyes and then looking back for the replays on the monitor. Balls and strikes, though, when you're at the major league level, are so much easier to see on the monitor because you have that center field cam where it's just fixated in there and you can tell the break of the pitches and stuff. So, and the other thing is that I've wanted to slow down just a touch on like my pace when I'm on television. So by looking at the monitor, it does slow me up just a little bit. And so when I go back and watch it, like I'm trying not to talk as much. I'm trying to like cut back on the amount of words that I use to explain and then work more with what my partner's saying, maybe pay attention to what what he says and then go off of that. So, but it's a great question. I don't know. What about you, Jesse?
So what I was always told, and this is always is the wrong word. This is a recent thing. You watch the monitor until the ball is put in play. And as soon as the ball is put in play, you just have to find it. You've got to pick it up, and now you call the entire play while watching the field. And then when there's a dead ball, you go right back to the monitor.
It also depends who you work with, too. Sorry, Kevin. It depends who you work with, too, because if you're working with, like, Ron Coomer, he likes to call the pitches. So you don't really call the pitches if he's on there. Like he that's one of those things where he'll be say, "Hey, Mick, I'm going to do this. Let me call the pitches." And you'll say, "Here it comes." And then Ronnie's like, "Hey, that's a backdoor cutter. That's a slider." Like his level of comfort and expertise in that is much higher than mine, right? So it's just something less that I have to do. So I'm more saying, "Here comes the 1-1." And then giving him that space to go back in there and say what the pitch is. So you know what I'm saying, Jesse? Like, so I don't need the monitor as much to really to call the pitch. But if I'm working by myself and I'm calling the pitch, it makes me sound a lot smarter because with the monitor there, I'm going to get it right. At least I hope so.
The reason I asked is that despite MLB saying broadcasters would not be traveling, there were some broadcasters traveling. Corey Previs and Dan Gladden were at guaranteed Wrigley Field for the Twins opener, and they sounded normal. They were watching him in normal circumstances, working off the monitor as much as you would expect. Bob Uecker was not with the team at Wrigley. And it kind of sounded like it. He was working off probably 3 or 4 monitors, and I think doing his best. But the man's 80. He's been doing this 50 years now. So in that respect, he sounded pretty good, but there was still a little delay because I had the radio sound on when the TV was on, and that's always bad sync anyway. But I felt kind of sorry for Bob because he's He's Bob Uecker. So that's why I was wondering what your experiences were with working with monitors. And I don't know if you saw any cutaways. I don't know if the Cubs did this on Marquee. One, I think it was Pittsburgh. I think it was Root who cut to the control room with 30 monitors set up. So the poor director's got to keep track of 30 monitors. And it's just, I know my head was exploding just watching him and his assistant work. I can't imagine trying to keep track of like 2 or 3 like a broadcaster would.
You know what I think it's like is now the World Cup games or the Olympics, where you're sending out the feeds to every other country that didn't send in their broadcaster. All right, we need to get a shot of this guy. We need to get a shot of this. We need to keep it right down the middle. So close up now of the manager, etc. I bet you those folks are so tired when the game ends.
Yeah, especially because they've got two people giving them instruction, because Sinclair's only doing 1 video feed a game for both visitors and away. So everyone's got to share the same feed.
Yeah.
Which means you've got one team producer in one ear and another team producer in another ear, and they don't necessarily want to see the same stuff.
No, what I've heard is that each team sends a visiting camera guy on the road. And that way, let's say the home team broadcaster is really talking about this for a long time, but the visiting team broadcaster is talking about that. The visiting team broadcaster can just pick up that visiting camera guy's camera shot.
Yeah.
But it's pretty convoluted. And Craig Goldstein from Baseball Prospectus has written a lot recently about what he considers to be a failing in current TV baseball broadcasts, which is people are not trusting that their watchers like baseball. And so they're just trying to distract from it. And there's interviews, and this is separate broadcasts or national broadcasts. And let's bring other people on. Let's talk about anything else that we can. This whole idea of not trusting, to put it bluntly, that your watcher enjoys the game that you are covering.
There were an awful lot of close-ups on players, I got to say, much more, which I liked. You know, seeing these guys close up made them a lot more human than just seeing them from a distance on the field. But my wife watched some baseball with me. She's not a baseball fan, but she enjoyed it. So maybe Craig's right, but maybe he's wrong in that maybe this is the way to go to create some new interest in the game.
Hey, on a different note, Patrick Mahomes joining the world of owners. The Kansas City Chiefs quarterback joining the Kansas City Royals ownership team. And Kevin, my very first question to you was, can you remember another current player joining an ownership group?
And Magic Johnson would have been, part of the Guggenheim ownership group of the Dodgers. So he crossed sports. And I believe he still has Lakers ownership too. So he's one of those few guys with ownership stakes in 2 sports. So Mahomes might as well have a stake in the Chiefs the way his contract is. So
well, but to the Royals to say, okay, I've helped out the Chiefs. Now let's see if I can help out the other Kansas City team. Mick, he's helped out your fantasy team, right?
Yeah, a couple years ago, my friend Terrence, got to make sure that I give Terrence credit. He's kind of my GM of my fantasy team. So he comes into the draft, and Terrence knows everything about football, and he's like, hey, we're going to take this guy. He's a rookie, and we're going to take him in like the 14th round. His name's Patrick Mahomes. And so I guess this was 3 years ago. And so we took him. And, I mean, within, 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, my gosh, this guy's amazing, And then it was a keeper league, so I had him the next year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I don't know. But anyway, I ended up trading him and got a good return for him. I'm a huge fan, so I was glad that he won the Super Bowl. I met Travis Kelce at spring training, hanging out with Rick Sutcliffe. So, that's his favorite target there, the tight end of the Chiefs. But then when I was a kid, Pat Mahomes, I remember when he was on the Cubs. But I was like the last person that knew that Pat Mahomes was dad of Patrick Mahomes, which makes perfect sense. It just never dawned on me. And those were the days where I was watching a lot of Cubs baseball. And I remember when Patrick Mahomes or Pat Mahomes would come in and pitch. So good for him. Good for him. I'm glad that the family's doing so well. And and it's honestly, it's good to have like minority owners involved in sports. I mean, like that's kind of something that we strive for in this country. To see people from all backgrounds kind of have a piece to the pie. So it's pretty cool.
On that note, I believe we just had the announcement of the first black-owned professional baseball team, right, in the Atlantic League.
The first Atlantic League one. There have been some in minor league baseball. There's none now. And there was actually an effort to bring in a minority ownership group that was shot down by the Baltimore Orioles 3 years ago. But Atlantic League brought in as a plus, he's a minority owner, but more importantly, he's a local owner. And I think that always bodes well for a baseball team, whether it's independent or MILB. So good on the Atlantic League for bringing in a local owner like him. And Gastonia will hope it's a big success. Gastonia is an interesting city. So next year we'll be interested with that ballpark opening.
Yeah, I've been there. Done games from Gastonia before. The old stadium when I was in the Coastal Plain League. There's a lot of talk about Nashville getting a team, and that there's a minority-owned group that's trying to bring Major League Baseball to Nashville. I would love to see it. I would love to see Major League Baseball in Nashville and some of these other cities where they could support a team, and there's a lot of growth. Obviously Portland's got a lot going on right now. You've heard them. I don't see that happening anymore. But, like Charlotte and Nashville, I still think the Midwest could have another team, like Oklahoma City maybe. Montreal wants a team. Buffalo, I mean, look, they're fighting for the Blue Jays right now. And
have better lights.
Yeah, right. Like, so hopefully that as baseball either moves franchises or expands, that we'll see some groups that are minority owned jump in there. I'm not saying that I'm saying that I hope that they win because they're the best, right? That they have the best package, that they put it all together. I'm not saying give the team to a group that can't afford to pay the players, which is when you see the teams that fail, it's the ownership that comes in and can't afford to run it. But there are so many people out there in groups who are ready, like this group in Nashville, that can do it, that have the funds and the backing to go in there and make a success out of it. And I kind of, my fingers are crossed. I hope that it happens for Nashville. I'd love to see that group be the ones that kind of bring it back. And then they've even talked about maybe naming the team the Nashville Stars, which would kind of be like one of the Negro League teams from back in the day. That'd be cool too. I love all that stuff. It's exciting. And I hope that there's been so many things that baseball has done that I feel like are too progressive, some of these rule changes and the ball and all this stuff. That'd be something that I would be down for, that's it's progressive to have some new teams. I'm just saying in the form of like, let's expand the game. Let's take over some of these markets where you could put baseball in Nashville and I know it would work, or you could do it in Charlotte and I know it would work. Instead of throwing these teams in cities like Oakland, if they can't get a stadium, it's time to move on and put it somewhere else where people are ready to really support the game.
Brandon Bellamy, the new owner, bringing baseball to Gastonia. And I quickly did some research. The Gastonia Cardinals from 77 to 82, the Gastonia Expos, 83 to 84. They were the Gastonia Jets in 1985, the Tigers in 86, and the Rangers 87 through 92. And I suppose, Kevin, was 1992 the last time that Gastonia had a baseball team?
Yes, it was. And then it went summer collegiate after that. And I think the Grizzlies have been fairly successful, maybe too successful, because originally this was supposed to be a Grizzlies project, and instead it got so big it ended up being an Atlantic League project. Gastonia, once a city like that loses a team, it will never regain it because Charlotte's a AAA market, and that's one county over from Mecklenburg. So, there have been talk about trying to get minor league baseball in there in the past, but the territorial rules would never allow it.
Kevin, excuse my ignorance. I'm used to the Atlantic League being, let's say, Long Island all the way now, Southern Maryland, Waldorf. How much does the Atlantic League come as far south as North Carolina?
Goes as far south as Texas, Sugar Land.
Well, I'm thinking about the Atlantic coast, but you're right. The Sugar Land Skeeters are Atlantic League.
Yeah, for now, we'll see. We'll see what's the great the great change over from when MLB takes over MILB, whether Sugar Land moves up. It may not now that what I'm hearing. But anyway, yeah, it was the plan was to put one team in Texas and then get two or three others, so that you could have self-contained play for part of the year. That didn't work out, and so the travel costs in that league are just horrendous. So having two North Carolina teams and potentially losing Sugar Land is actually good news for players in that league, to be totally honest. So you'd have High Point as a travel partner to Gastonia.
Okay.
The trouble is they've been having issues retaining teams. New Britain dropped out. Somerset has also been rumored as a minor league baseball market, although all this is so speculative, and there's been so much talk unrelated to reality surrounding this topic. So who knows what'll really happen. Independent baseball is going through some real transitional times, to be sure. And we're going to see more shakeups, I assume. But for Gastonia, this is good news. And that ballpark can be used in a variety of situations as well. You could throw summer collegiate in there eventually if the Atlantic League doesn't work out, for example.
Transitional times, aren't we all? Let's talk Miami Marlins. 4 more players testing positive today. I think they're up to 15 players. What's to be done if you're Major League Baseball?
Well, not cancel the season. If you listen to Rob Manfred, he said that's not being considered. Although, as a counterpoint to that, I saw Ken Rosenthal was reporting that the Washington Nationals voted against playing a series in Miami. Did not want to go down there. And I don't blame them, to be totally honest. Although it doesn't sound like the Miami Marlins outbreak actually happened in Miami. It happened in Atlanta. So, but the players are clearly concerned about this. So I think it'll be an interesting 2 or 3 days to see how they react to things.
Yeah, and we'll see about results coming back from other teams. But I mean,
yeah, because every time everyone has a strained hammy, everyone assumes it's COVID. Bo Bichette pulls out of the game yesterday, and everyone screamed, COVID, oh no, they're going down. It's like he's got a pulled hammy. He sat out the game for a very legitimate reason. So every time you see a player report, it's assumed that the worst is being assumed by everyone.
Mick, what was your reaction to all those Miami Marlins, the outbreak with the Marlins?
Yeah, a couple things. Like I'm just, since the beginning of this, I didn't want to shut things down. I still don't. I've told you guys that, and I get it. Like some people that are, in a different spot than me, that benefit them to stay and work at home, or, if you have your older preconditions, and all that stuff. If you're under 50, like now we're seeing that, at least from what I read yesterday, you have a better chance of dying in a car wreck or being murdered than dying of COVID. But if you're older and you have a pre-existing deal, it's terrible. I mean, we saw what happened in the nursing homes in New York and New Jersey and other places. So, not with that said, I don't want to get it, but I also wouldn't want to spend my life hiding from it. Like that's what my whole point's been the entire time. It's good to see the players wearing masks and everything and doing whatever you can preventative wise, but I don't want them to cancel the games. You have 60 players now, and we knew this was going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. And if we shut down baseball, every other sport might be a domino that follows. So baseball right now, Rob Manfred, the game, are on center stage to see how they deal with this. And it's a tough situation because, there's so many of these Marlins that are getting it. And it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. Who knows how it got in there, but this is something that probably we're going to be dealing with forever, right? I mean, it's the next flu, except it sucks. It's worse.
So what do you do with this? What do you do with the Marlins?
My thought is
players aren't going to be on the injured list for, let's say, a couple of days. This is a couple of weeks thing.
Hey, that's part of it. You got 60 guys. Bring that other crew up. That's why they're supposed to be there. and switch them out. Is it the same quality? No, but you know what? That's why we expanded the playoffs too. And I got to tell you why expanding the playoffs was such a good idea is that first off, if this happens, right, it gives you a lot more flexibility this year. If you go through a situation where you have to use players that are in the, in the 60 and the other 30, the other camp to fill in. The other thing is that what happens if you have a really bad 30 games and you're out of it? Something like this happens, and guess what? I'm out of here, guys. So it's like that carrot being there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's actually a genius move to have the expanded playoffs, because 60 games is going to be hard to be eliminated after 60 games. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you still have a shot. Like I'm gonna be curious to see in 45 games who's the furthest out of the mix for at least something. Like maybe that last playoff spot. I bet you that 90% of the league still has a chance mathematically with 15 games left, right? So you don't have everybody just walking out and quitting. This whole situation is our World War II, and part of what the tough part about this is, those people went over and sacrificed by, having bullets shot at them. We're doing our thing. And if our thing's playing baseball, then that's part of it. If our thing's talking about baseball, that's part of it too. Like, it's uncomfortable because it is scary. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, who wants to even think about getting this? And we've had friends that have got it when it first started. I didn't know anyone. Now I know a lot of people have had it. I don't even know if I had it or not, to be honest with you, because I traveled so much back when it was kind of forming around. We didn't even know when it first came out how bad it really was. Like we've learned a lot as this thing's gone on. Something tells me the way that this spreads, that it was there a while before we really even understood the, how much out there it is. So going back to the question, I just think that you follow the way that they set it up. They had a game plan for this, and that's why we got 60 players there. Like I would, me personally, I'm a broadcaster. I'd probably be in that list. You put me in, I feel like I'm as good as anybody that does my job. Give me a chance. So so there's probably players that feel the same way, that are in the minor leagues, that haven't gotten the opportunity. They're going to slide in there, and who knows, maybe it makes someone's career for them. That's the exciting part about having this big pool of players that you're able to choose from. Is it a bad break for the Marlins? Yes. If you said what team was probably going to go through this first, I'd say probably the Marlins, just because that's just seems to be their luck, right? But the last thing I want to see is us canceling baseball, because then it's canceling every other sport's going to follow, basketball, football. I got to work, man. I got to eat. I got to work. And selfishly, I'm like, let's get through this. Let's get through this. And I don't think that any of the players who have it are going to die from it. That's what our statistics show. But I'll tell you what, they got to really be careful about who they come in contact with now, because that may not be the case for the doorman at the hotel, or the guy that drives the bus that they're on, or the pilot. I mean, who knows, right? That's where they have to be very, very cognizant of what they're doing, and that's all of us if we get it.
Well, maybe they should have gone to a bubble, though. That's sort of the question that differentiates Major League Baseball, is that every other sport went to a bubble. Bubbles are hard, no doubt about that. And not going to the bubble both save the sport money and appease the players. The players didn't want a bubble either. So we'll see if that was a bad decision or a good decision. Right now, the Orioles are in a bubble. Let's face it. They've not left their hotel while on the road, and they probably will stick close to clubhouses in their own homes back in Baltimore. So I think that's the big differentiator right now, and it wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me if they canceled the season, and I agree with you on that. It wouldn't surprise me if they adopt a bubble at some point.
I think one difference between the analogy that you made in World War II and now is that World War II was going on, and yet there were baseball games going on, and these were separate battlegrounds. right now on the baseball field, you could get COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen the Diamondbacks have lost a scout who passed away on Thursday, Johan Maya, and Eduardo Rodriguez of the Red Sox now has myocarditis. He's got a heart issue now. So I think it's worth pursuing and seeing what's going on. I thought that the basketball tournament, if you really wanted the radical idea, I thought their idea of if you've got a player who tests positive, you're disqualified, you're out. So the Miami Marlins will be out of this baseball season, and it's an Agatha Christie and then there were none situation. You really have to take care, because if anybody tests positive, sorry about it. But as you said, that you expect that there's going to be another outbreak to come up or something else down the line. These are questions that Major League Baseball has to answer reactively to the Marlins, but proactively to the next. Because if they continue to kick a can, if Rod Manfred continues not to release a public statement, and as of currently, I've not seen a public statement about Miami, it's going to look really bad for the next outbreak.
Yeah, I mean, he sort of did in that I found it interesting that the only interview Rob Manfred did was with MLB Network, with Tom Ferducci under very controlled circumstances. And it's like, Rob, get out there and face the accusers and stand up for your game. That was very disappointing. But you're right. There's a lot of things to confront here, and I'm not quite so sure the sport is willing to do it at this time. Did you see that Andrew Cuomo offered the use of New York State as a site for every baseball team? He said, move them all to New York. We could handle everyone in our ballparks.
They got so excited about landing the Blue Jays.
Such as it is. How many games is that going to be? What was it, 26, 25? It's not even the full home season. So
No.
And the players are going to love being in Buffalo, I'm sure. So,
well, okay, let me just say this. There were players who came out saying that they didn't want to play in Buffalo. If there was no pandemic and we had a normal baseball season, player after player after player that I saw quoted was going to start his season in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Those guys were not going to be Toronto Blue Jays to start the year. So I think that they should all take a deep, step back, breathe. It's going to be okay.
You spoiled them in Lansing.
Clearly.
Once they lived the Lansing life, Buffalo is just, sort of a pale imitation of an experience.
Okay, I've got your baseball thesaurus word. One of the best things that I saw in baseball over the weekend was G-Man Choi of Tampa Bay, who's a left-handed batter, deciding why not step up there from the right side, and he went yard. He had a 400-plus home run to straightaway center field, just, flirting with the switch hitter lifestyle. So I went into switch hitter. Switch hitter is a switch sticker or a turnaround hitter or a turnover hitter. Mick, how about any stories that you might have of switch hitting?
Yeah, Len calls them switch batters. I've always called them switch hitters, but loved switch hitting. I mean, and you know why? Because we grew up with one of the great switch hitters of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Eddie Murray. And we'd play wiffle ball in the backyard. And if it was a right-handed wiffle ball thrower, I'd have to bat left-handed. I had to copy Eddie. So it's amazing. Eddie grew up in L.A. He had brothers that also played baseball. He had a bunch of brothers, and they would play this game in their garage where you basically had to bat just like the Dodgers. And so you would have the same thing that we used to do, like if it was this guy, you'd bet this way. If it was this guy, you'd bet that way. As you would play this game, and you had to hit the ball out of the garage. So you had to hit a line drive or the ball would hit the roof in there and stuff, So Eddie's with the Orioles, and I want to say it was in Charlotte with the Charlotte Orioles. And it's like, hey, you switch hit, right? I mean, maybe we should try this in the game. And he turns into one of the great switch hitters of all time. It's weird how some of these guys, they switch hit like so late in their development. Ian Happ is a switch hitter for the Cubs. His brother taught him how to switch hit. His older brother. He was kind of couldn't switch hit, thought it was cool, taught Ian how to do it. And look at him. I mean, he's off to a really good start for the Cubs this year. And and he's a switch hitter, so he's been doing it since he was like 8 or 9 years old, and just followed through. Chipper Jones, another great switch hitter. It was like another one of those deals where I think he hit left-handed, and maybe I'm wrong, but they switched him around when he was with the Braves in the minor leagues, and boom, made a career out of him. Someone that could switch hit is Javi Baez. And if you ever see him take batting practice left-handed, you're going, he could do this. If the Cubs would have had that scout like the Orioles did and said, hey, let's just do this, I promise you, Javi Baez would have been one of the great switch hitters of this generation of players. It's amazing when you watch him bat left-handed.
For me, similar to you, growing up playing wiffle ball or just playing ball in the backyard, we would choose our hitters. You'd have to choose 3 different hitters or 4 different hitters, and they could not all be right-handed, speaking as a right-handed hitter. So I was Will Clark, or I'd be Eddie Betton from the left side. I'd be Harold Baines and stand as far away from home plate as I could, and it would just be a blast. Right-handed was my best side for a batting eye and for contact, and from the left side, I could crush it over the rooftop. So I loved it. I never actually tried it in the Little League game because I wasn't confident enough. Too many holes in my swing. But a good switch hitter is marvelous.
You know why I didn't do it in games? And I was a much better hitter left-handed. I could see the ball better. But for some reason, when I batted left-handed, I couldn't get out of the way of the pitch. And I don't know why. I get it, so if someone threw inside, I got hit. I just couldn't. My reaction on the getting away from a pitch that's coming at you was enough where I was just a little bit too nervous to try to do it in a game.
So speaking of switch hitting, we had a record this year, and I'm trying to verify it. I saw it on Twitter. The first time that the top 4 batters in a lineup were all switch hitters.
Yes.
Was that Cleveland?
I believe that it was, because I saw that posted as well. James Smythe was a guy who I first knew when he was a broadcaster in the Blue Jays organization. And now he's the Yes Network's official statistician. So I saw him post it as well. I'll race you to trying to figure it out. But I think
I just did a little searching, couldn't find it except for a preseason reporter, Francona, saying.
Here it is. Are you ready?
Yes.
The very first all switch hitter infield to be lined up 1, 2, 3, and Hernandez, Ramirez, Lindor, Santana. So all switch hitter infield, which was done by the Dodgers back in 65, 66 right, with Parker Lefebvre, Maury Wills, and Junior Gilliam. But the Angels in 2009 had a switch hitter infield. Very first time that they batted 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, the other thing that just happened, 1, 2, 3, 4, was the Toronto Blue Jays with the all second generation infield. Batting 1, 2, 3, 4, and Vladdy and Bo and Kevin Biggio and Travis Shaw, Jeff Shaw's son.
Yeah,
how many guys have you run into?
Go ahead, Mick.
I was going to say, how many guys have you run into that have tried to switch hit, and then they're in the minor leagues, we see them. It's like the next year you see them, and you're like, oh, well, I guess Johnson's a lefty now. Where they're so bad at one side of the plate that it just gets somebody comes along like, hey, look, man, we're gonna axe that. That's something that we see a lot.
Oh man, there's a right-hander on the mound, and the other team will send up a batter I've never seen before, and he's listed as a switch hitter. There he is batting from the right side, and I'm going, guess not anymore.
It's over.
It was a fun experiment while it lasted. You can sometimes spot those guys in the cage where you're like, just don't know if it's going to work out for you.
Yeah, there's always an experiment with turning someone into a switch hitter, and there are always these thin jackrabbits trying to teach them how to be a lefty so they can get to first base faster. That's the profile.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and there's also so we had a batter with the Lugnuts named Johnny Aiello, third baseman, redheaded, bearded guy, not a jackrabbit, power guy. Johnny had switch hit for many years in his life, had stopped switch hitting, and this year to start up the season, he, after last year, went to Instructs, and he was taking up switch hitting again. And one of the chief reasons for it was last year, as a right-handed batter only, crushed left-handed pitching, could not hit right-handed pitching. So they were going to see if turning him around from the left side, if that helped him out at all, or if he was just going to have to be a platoon defensive third baseman. All right, on that note, let's say we wrap it up.
All right.
Hey, we covered a lot of ground here today. Mick Gillispie, any final thoughts?
Nothing. Just had a great time talking to you guys. And I mean, like, it's having the game to watch at night and take notes on my Twitter, at Broadcaster Mick. I've started doing just a little 5-minute coffee and Cubs show every day. Like, and I guess part of it's just like, I just miss talking about baseball, right? Like, it's amazing how much I enjoy watching a game. And I guess just because we've had it taken away from us this year, to have it back a little bit has been fantastic. I've just enjoyed watching it, and can't wait to talk to you guys about it again next week. Hopefully this situation with the Marlins gets handled and everyone's safe, and it's just kind of a bump in the road.
If you're a baseball player, send them your resume. Kevin Reichard, any final thoughts?
Always great to chat with the both of you. It's the highlight of my week. Wanted to warn people that after I've been hinting at it for weeks, we finally have book schedules released, thanks to baseball coming back and spring training next year and the major league season for sure next year, even if it's being dropped this year. So we'll have about 7 book announcements in the next 7 weeks. So
awesome.
Watch for that in your newsletters. It's a cool time. We were talking about Gastonia. That'll be the North Carolina book will be updated. So adding in a whole bunch of new cities, never a bad game. The Southern League book, Mark McCarter, will be announcing tomorrow. Here's your hint. Second edition. And Jesse, you're in the acknowledgments for that book. So he was very, very appreciative of your time in Montgomery. So looking forward to all that. If I look tired, it's because we've been working so hard on these darn books and they just don't make themselves. So
for Kevin, for Mick, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This has been another Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.